Excellent. There you go. Okay, so just a repetition. This is Change Hampton hosting a presentation by two wonderful activists in our community on the East End who are very involved in the composting movement. And so this talk tonight from them is called Rethinking Food Waste. Engaging our community is in the many ways and whys to compost. Sag Harbor resident Kate Plumb will make the case for community composting, outlining a 10-family pilot that can be replicated in other towns. And Mary Morgan of Orient on the North Fork will describe the many programs being piloted to divert food from the landfill and repurpose into compost. She will describe a possible East End initiative where households pilot the use of a countertop composter to make a soil enrichment. So let's see if we've got, I'm just looking to see if there are any other folks to admit, but no, we seem to be sailing. So I don't know who's starting first, Kate or
Yes,
Mary?
I am starting.
Okay, Kate is, as she describes herself, a local foodie who lives in Sag Harbor. She co-owned Provisions Health Food Store, which we all know and love. From 1983 to 94, she studied biodiverse farming at Emerson College. She co-founded the East End Community Organic Farm on Long Lane in East Hampton and co-founded Slow Food East End and currently manages both the East Hampton and Sag Harbor farmers markets, which we all participate in and appreciate. Mary Morgan is a locavore, she says, turned climatarian. I love her description, where food climate impacts are considered, including zero food waste. Get that, folks. Mary Morgan's family has lived in East Hampton for 12 generations, farming and fishing. She lives in Orient with her husband, Tom, and with Kate Plumb was an early founder of the local chapter, Slow Food East End. Mary co-founded a grassroots effort, Drawdown East End, which others of you on this call are participants in, to inspire local climate solutions. She co-authors a column in the East End Beacon called Climate Local Now. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. Wow, quite a mouthful.
And we'll take questions after
At the
this
end, yes,
also.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Good.
share my screen now. So can you all see and hear me now?
Yes, good.
Mhm. Yes.
So this is a PowerPoint that was developed by several different people, making the case for community composting. It's a kind of an overall picture of why we're doing this. And we're thanking Tony Romano, Resource Director and Treasurer from the Ecological Cultural Initiative, and Mary Foster Morgan, whom you already know and Mark Hobner, co-chair of the Riverheads Environmental Advisory, who I believe is on the call as well. Their slides and the participation helped me create this PowerPoint. So one of the things that we're interested in for people to understand.
Did Kate freeze?
So with every bit of food waste tossed into the solid waste stream, we are letting one of our most precious natural resources disappear. And these are statistics that you'll kind of hear, but even if you remember one of them, it would be good. According to the USDA, food waste in the USA is approximately 30 to 40% of the food supply. Food waste, that's just waste. According to the EPA, in each town, an estimated 24% of the municipal waste stream is food waste. The single largest component of any municipal waste stream is food waste. So in this process, if this food waste can be diverted through community composting and thereby enriching our local soils while avoiding the thousands of dollars in trucking costs, why not? So this slideshow is to be presented to the Massachusetts Park Board in Sag Harbor, because we want to present to them a proposal to use a patch of their parkland as a community composting site. So one of the reasons we want to understand it, whatever we're doing, wherever we're putting on the land, leaches right into the Peconic estuary system. And this to me is the big picture that somehow we sometimes just gloss over or don't acknowledge correctly. This is a picture of the watersheds in this country. Mark Hobner showed us this last January at that symposium in Shelter Island when the 5 East End towns got together. Now, obviously, we're so small you can't even see it, but this is understanding of the what did I say? I always gonna say the watershed in this country. This is, it's the veins, it's our circulatory system, really. It's our blood system in the United States. And here we are on Long Island, we are an island, and sometimes we lose track of that, and we are surrounded in all ways by water. So whatever we're putting on in the ground is eventually going to leach into the Peconic estuary, and it affects the fish that are living there, the aqua life. And we've had big problems with trying to counteract all the excess nitrogen that's going down. If you add Connecticut up there, what they do is also affecting us. So there was an initiative, a Peconic Bioregion Initiative. 5 East End towns met last January. And the goal here is for all of and there are definitely different solutions for every town or municipality. But the whole point is to kind of get the community engagement strategy directed at all East End stakeholders to reach a goal of diverting food waste from our town waste system. So in order to enrich the enriching of the compost, it would come from composting those food waste scraps, will benefit our farms and soil. And we know how beneficial that would be for the soil. The goal is to divert, recover, and reuse 100% of the food scraps. Since household food scraps make 70% of the household food scraps in the waste stream, we begin there. Our ultimate goal is to reduce food waste from our waste stream 50% by 2025 and 100 by 2030. This is something Mary Morgan shared with me, the Washington Post, a graph that they had about the US greenhouse gas emissions from wasted food. This is from 2019. And you can see homes is way, way beyond restaurants, manufacturing, retail, and farms. The number of households with their wasted food, which gets into the municipal waste stream and then just gases off as greenhouse gas emissions. Now, restaurants don't have as much, you might think, a motivation, because they pay for everything, and so their bottom line is very dependent. So they're more likely to use onion skins, for instance, and not, make a soup stock out of them, for instance, and not have any of food waste. But homes are different. So this is a pilot. This is a rough, and I know Mary's going to go into this more deeply, but this is as of January. This might have changed since then, but this is in the 5 East End towns. This is what's going on. Riverhead, the Environmental Advisory Committee ran a successful 3-month pilot food scrap program with 12 households, 2 restaurants, and 2 farm sites. Mark Hobner is in charge of that in Southold. I think Mary's going to talk about this, because the Riverhead's pilot was based on the Southold's pilot project. 30 families over 30 days separated their food scraps into green boxes and brought it to the transfer station. So Mary's going to go into more detail about how that was run. In Hampton Bays, this is the Ecological Cultural Initiative, which offers a composting program to its membership. They have a Good Ground Heritage garden at St. Joseph's Villa, and we can easily go over there, and that's what we're going to use that as a model for hopefully the community composting project that we're working on initiating here in Sag Harbor. But this has been a very successful program, and this is Tony Romano's thing and Joe Rappaport's project. Shelter Island, Sylvester Manor offers a food waste collection program for their CSA members because they have all those animals over there. And then they make compost, put on the vegetables. And East Hampton, and I know this is here we are at Change Hampton. So I know East Hampton came to that seminar in January where all the Peconic, the bioregion, all the 5 towns met. And so Change Hampton and Rewilding are, and I think there's a seminar tomorrow. There's a lot going on in East Hampton town. This is probably a little outdated. So why is community composting needed? Long Island landfills will reach capacity in June of 2024. That means all our solid waste will have to be trucked off Long Island at our expense. One East Hampton town, East End town spent $390,000 last year on hauling waste. So when the landfills end 2024, we're in a major conundrum about where the food scraps we're going to go, where's the combustible waste is going to go. So if this food waste is a significant amount of the solid waste stream, and the US is 40%, the world is 30%, and Southhold was 25 to 30%, then wouldn't it be beneficial for us to try to get the food scraps waste out of the municipal waste stream? So there's another motivation factor here, and the New York State has mandated towns to reduce their CO2 emissions by 40% in 2023. That's coming up. I mean, in fact, it's here. So if we were able, I don't know how that's going, but a full diversion of the household food waste from the waste stream equates to a 15 to 18% reduction in food waste emissions from the total solid waste stream. So if we can do that, if we can get 15 to 18%, it will count towards 1/3 of the mandated 40% reduction. So this is the Ecological Cultural Initiative, their solution. This is Tony over there in St. Joseph's at the Villa, and reducing costs for hauling food waste, reusing local waste products as compost. People come, they get a little bucket, they bring in their food scraps, the food scraps get weighed, and they write it on a little piece of paper, and then they get solid gold. We call it black gold, the compost, should they want it, to bring it back home and put it on their bushes and plants, or there's other alternatives. Tony has a garden right there, so some of it is used there. There's matching funds available. So at this point, Ecological Cultural Initiative has maintaining 7 compost piles at 3 different locations in the town of Southampton. So each pile is a capacity to process food waste from 10 families. So ECA already is transforming 2,500 pounds of food waste into 1,600 pounds of compost in 3 months. And this is what we're hoping to initiate in Massachusetts Park, hopefully this summer. This is a phase 1 budget's about $1,000. You know, what the expenses would be: initial site inspection, and then the site preparation and equipment. It's really not very big a budget for this process. It depends on volunteers, and we're working on creating a list of volunteers who would be there when the 10 families came to the park to deliver their food scraps. So a 4-month pilot will consume an estimated 2.5 tons of yard waste, mulch, and produce approximately a ton of black gold. So this is a 3-month project. This is geared towards a Massachusetts, but as I say, it can be, and that's what Mary's going to talk about too, about scaling up or distributing, or, you know, because every community is probably going to do some things a little bit differently. So we would need a 10 by 30 foot patch of grass where sunlight, patch accessible for cars. And this would be under the guidance of Ecological Cultural Initiative, which is a very successful project. And we intend to find the funds ourselves, but there are grants available now for this. So that's the story, really. This is what happens when you've turned your food scraps into Southampton black gold. It smells beautifully. He doesn't have any problem with rodents. There's no smell. There's no meat scraps. It's just vegetables, and that's the volunteer families who say they're going to do this. It's part of their process, their education process, that they keep the vegetable scraps separate from. I think eggshells are fine, but they don't put the meat scraps in there. So that's my story here. And if there are any questions, please, we can ask them after Mary talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Mary.
Okay, that was great, Kate. And what Tony, I think he's really this whole idea can be replicated in small areas all across the East End, as far as he can, travel to once a week to get to the site to make sure everything's okay and all that. It'd be great. I mean, I think he's willing to do that.
Yes, I believe so too.
Let me see if I can get to my, if I go to share screen.
Because you're
and
going to
then-
have different options for people in terms of composting. There are different options here, right?
I'm pressing share. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
All right. So yes, there, oops, can you see this? I don't see it because I see people's faces, but there's a photograph?
Yes, we see it
see
large
the whole
on
thing?
my screen. Mhm.
Okay. Okay,
Everybody
good.
else can see this?
Sure.
Yes.
That.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
There's
Okay, great.
Mark right there.
Well, there's Mark right there, and there's Sherry Thirlby, the lead in our pilot program. This was the pilot program Kate was talking about, 30 families in Southfield. There I am, and here's some of our 30 families. So onward here. Why we did this, how it came to be. And I'll kind of go quickly because Kate covered a lot of this, but the three people who started the pilot, Mark and Sherry and I, we were inspired by this fellow, Paul Hawken of Drawdown. He had asked the same question we were asking, which is, are there solutions to the climate crisis? And he wrote a book about it, and it became a bestseller, Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. And we were all inspired by the book. And I came away really with three big items from the book, which is he named the goal, Drawdown. Stop sending greenhouse gases up and start drawing them down. And there's many ways to do that. The book is a roadmap of 100 solutions that are cost effective, measurable, they have benefits, and food is big. You can see on this pie chart, electricity is 25% of US greenhouse gas emissions, food and land use is 24%. It's big. And it's number 3 in his ranking of solutions. And when you add that to compost, which is the beneficial use of the food waste, you get a big, that's like number 1 in my book. And then the third thing I got out of the book is that really these 100 solutions are pilots to scale. If communities and states did these pilots, they're scalable. So why food waste? Kate really covered it. It's huge harm. Frankly, it's avoidable. It's a huge waste, and it's a huge loss of our resources. The local impact, Kate covered a lot, but if you can look at the green box, really the Peconic Estuary here, the compost is the big winner because it enriches the soil, it adds nutrients, which means less pollutants, less fertilizers. It helps soil retain water, which means less irrigation, it lowers stormwater runoff, it helps filter water to the aquifer, and it aids in carbon sequestration in soil and in plants. So the three of us met, and we said we want to create a scalable pilot for our town. And our focus was food waste. And we named the goal, which is 100% diversion from the waste stream for those 30 families over 30 days. And how are we going to do it? We were going to help them divert their food waste from the waste stream, help them recover it and reuse it. The basic steps we took were we sought approval from the town, the waste management resource director here. We ran a focus group. We solicited a site to receive the food scraps from a farm, because that was the requirement of the town, that we do not leave the food scraps at the town transfer station, that we take them somewhere else. And we solicited the 30 families from what we call self-haulers. And East Hampton actually has kind of the same percentage of self-haulers as Southold does. About 50% of the people who use the town transfer are self-haulers. They bring their own waste, and the other 50% hire a trucking firm. So we solicited 30 families to be involved in this from the self-haulers. And that's, I think, actually, and as we did the pilot, that's a good place to start if you're going to replicate the pilot. We purchased 60 buckets, and I can thank Slow Food East End because they gave us the grant for the buckets. And then we ran the pilot, we publicized the results, and we thanked the town, the farm, and the families. And we have a pilot ready to replicate or scale, which I think East Hampton is very interested in this, and some of these slides will be used for a presentation to them. What were the results? 30 families in 30 days diverted 1,000 pounds of food waste from the waste stream. That is, sadly to say, neatly fits into the US average of 1/2 pound per person per day is wasted. To me, that's an amazing amount of food waste, 1/2 pound a person per day. It translates into 1 metric ton of greenhouse gases were avoided. If all Southold residents diverted, we did the calculation of that would be 5 tons a day, 2 million tons a year that could be recovered and reused as compost. Of course, lowering town trucking costs and waste management costs, lowering methane, helping meet those that New York State mandate. And back to the pilot, 100% of those 30 families were compliant with the town and the farm requirements. I can't quite remember all the requirements, but I think it was no meat, bones, and that kind of thing. And everyone was 100% compliant. Mark and I know because we inspected each bucket. And we demonstrated to the town that people were willing to divert their food scraps away from the waste stream, and people want to do it. And 2 comments that I really liked from the pilot were, everyone said they want a place to compost. They want a place to compost. Please encourage the town to figure this out. And several of them said to me they saw the volume of the food they were wasting, and they're committed to wasting less, which to me is key to the reducing food waste part. We're not preaching to people. We're giving them an activity where they start to realize where they're creating their own problem. You know, they can waste less food. This is the slide that Kate was talking about. Got to move it over a little bit if I can. Whoops, go back. So this is the many ways to our community is engaging in composting and diverting food scraps from the waste stream and recovering them as compost. There's a lot of residents have the option to do backyard bins. ECI and Cornell both have classes in backyard composting. There's something called vermiculture, which is worm composting. People are doing that. A lot of kids get very excited about that. There's a kitchen countertop composter. I actually have one. A lot of people I know, when I mention it, they say, you know, they have it too. We have a compost site in our backyard, but when we got the composter, we use it a lot. We use it about twice a week. We add our food scraps to it, and it's a plug-in, and you turn it on, and in several hours, your food scraps are reduced by 90% to become a dry, almost like tea leaves. It's a soil amendment, And we can either throw it into our compost, or we can mix it with soil and add it to our garden. And what I'd really like to do, and what I'm looking for, is a not-for-profit to work with me on doing a pilot program about using the countertop composter, along with all these other ways of piloting of composting. Then there's neighborhood sites. There's a site in Breezy Shores in Southold that they got together, 6 neighbors, and said, let's have a compost together. And there's farm drop-off bins. A lot of people that I know who are in farm CSAs have told me that they have made private arrangements with the farms saying, can I bring my food scraps? And, let me know if I can feed your chickens, or if you just want me to put in your compost bin. And then there's what Tony Romano and the Ecological Culture Institute are doing at Good Ground, which Kate talked about, which is a scalable model. There's schools and church gardens. There's a garden in Southold called Common Ground. I've been speaking with them. They do have a compost site at the garden. It's a community garden. And I'm asking them if they would receive, if they would up their composting initiative and receive food scraps from a number of members of the community. And then there's the several pilots that Kate was talking about. The Riverhead model, which was 3 months of food scraps and a restaurant going to 2 farms. There's the Southold pilot that's replicable and scalable. Sylvester Manor has a CSA where the participants are allowed to drop off their food scraps at Sylvester Farm. That's volunteer operated. But again, they've had very good compliance. Sag Harbor is what Kate talked about. They're planning a program. In Southold, we had a farm to chef pilot. A young woman who was working at a restaurant said, I really would like to do something ecological here and at least get the food scraps from the kitchen to go to a farm. And so Mark and I helped her set that up, loaning her those buckets. And the chef said, she's made it really easy for me. And a big sign on the bucket says what he can put in the bucket. He just tosses any waste he has into the bucket. And she took it to the local farm. Again, it was Treber Farm who generously said, sure, for the summer, just put the food scraps in our compost. Some farm stands are having scrap bins. Kate has been talking about having a collection bin at the farmers markets. And there was an event that I put together with Mark and the young woman, Brianne Brigman, who did the farm to chef to farm pilot, which is my last slide here. I called it Food Recovery for Climate. Whoops, did I lose you or yeah? You guys can see this, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Food Recovery for Climate. It was an event tent. We asked the Peconic Land Trust if we could have a compost tent, actually a food scrap receiving tent is really what it is, at their Peconic. We had 12 volunteers sign up, some of those Southold composters I was talking about, 300 picnickers. We had only 6 buckets of food scraps from 300 picnickers. We had 5 farms ready to receive them. And it was just another way to educate the community about the importance of not wasting your food, and also your food scraps, not sending them to the landfill where they become methane. That was all the kind of showing the big picture of the circular economy. And for me, I just wanted to end it with that, food waste and eating local food is a climate action that I focus on. And a couple years ago, I took a pledge. I said, no organics are going to leave my property. And it's really been, fun. It's challenging and fun. And now I have a compost and I have a countertop composter. And I'll end with a Paul Hawken quote who said, pick the solution you love and run with it. I know for Kate and me, it's food. food and composting.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you both for such a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, this is really so impressive. I have to say that your impact on Eastern Long Island has just been extraordinary. And I see that this ball is moving with East Hampton Town now. And I guess you're going to see that tomorrow, right, with this group, and that this has really had an impact. Well, let's have some questions here. Any of you have questions for Mary or Katie on this?
Questions or comments, you know, Mark, if you
Yes.
want to speak up and say anything, that'd be great.
I'd like to make a comment. We face exactly the same problem here in Oaxaca. I guess it's a global problem, garbage, water. And what I realized since we started recycling all our food waste is not just that we cut it in half, but how personal it really is. It's
Yeah.
my garbage, not somebody else's. And perhaps if we can get people to understand that, we can get them to act more forcefully, because it's not the town's, it's mine, and I have to do something, and it's actually something where I can do something about it right now, today. So
Stefan, that is beautiful. And Kate may want to comment, but I just want to say that to me, that's why these pilots, even if they're 10 families, are so valuable, because when you start to measure your food waste and put it in the bucket and realize it's part of a pilot and it's part of a science effort, and, you know, making a point to the town, it kind of dawns on you just what you said. Wow, I'm wasting a lot of food. I don't have to, and I can save some money here. You know, and I can use my food scraps to make soup. You know, we have stock is great. I use stock in everything.
Just sort of to follow up on Stefan, you know, as a home composter for 30 years, I wonder how, well, the choice that you made to do this group composting versus encouraging more home composting, especially since we live out here and most of us have enough space. You know, I tend to follow that. When I first started composting, there was a pamphlet that was put out by the Brooklyn Botanic Garden called Let It Rot. And, you know, I have followed that methodology for 30 years, which is I have a pile and I throw things on it, and a couple of times a year I dig it out, you know. It's not hard. It doesn't require advanced training. I wonder, you know, to what extent have you thought about encouraging the home composting alongside of this project?
That's for you, Kate. Like, why
Well,
are you doing it with?
Yes, I have you know, East Hampton Town gave us big black boxes when Jay Schneiderman was supervisor many decades ago. So I have my little black box, and yes, you know, but there's something about the community effort that I think is very important.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
because that's what we have to have, this sense that whatever I'm doing is contributing for good or ill to the general good. And, you know, just seeing, yes, and we're participating in this, and it feeds on itself. I think like that's what Mary said, you know, oh my God, we're so excited, we're doing this project, and you want to join. And I think it's because you can actually do something. There's so many problems and so many overwhelming problems that nobody can actually feel they can actually make a difference. And in composting, in the community composting, you know, in one little spot, I'm doing this, you walk away and you feel like, you know, that you're lighter, and you feel like you can do more because you contributed. It's not over, you know, it's not weighing you down anymore, that you have no power, or, you know, so.
I want to add too, Kate, that Tony Romano is a gift. This guy, he loves to compost. He loves to teach about it. He's really, I mean, we need to take advantage of the fact that he's really.
You go there and you can spend 3 hours talking to him about his compost pile.
And he attracts volunteers, and they stick with him. So if he's willing to replicate
Yes,
what he's doing all over the East End, let's go with it.
yes. No, he's willing to do it. Yeah, it's great. So-
Kate, hi, Kate, this is Derek across the
Hi,
street.
Derek. My
Hi,
neighbor.
Travis has a question. I was kind of wondering the same thing. It's about a chart that you had earlier. I'll let him ask or Mary had up a chart with the globe but yeah, we also compost everything that's all the vegetable stuff. We just put in a thing in the backyard. But I'm always getting on Travis about wasting food, so I'm making him watch this. And he has a question though, so go ahead, Travis.
I saw that it said on one of the charts, it was a pie chart, and it said waste from food and land use. What is land use, and how much waste does food make up individually?
Good question, Travis. That's for Mary.
That's a great question. That's in Paul Hawkins' book. I recommend that you get it out of the library, Drawdown. It's a really good book. And also there's a website, Project Drawdown. I think it's .org, .com.org. But it's there's a lot of excellent research on that website and videos. Land use is big. Land use means farming, agriculture. So food waste from restaurants and homes and all that. And even in the travel from a farm to, let's say, a farm stand or a place producing food, that's all part of that 24%. I don't exactly know how much is food waste and how much is from of the other types of emissions, but it's in the book, I'm sure.
You know, Travis, I can lend you the book. I have it. So you come across the street here and I lend it to you. Yeah, anytime, tonight or in the morning or something.
And check out their website, Project Drawdown.
Yes, Travis, we depend on your generation. I'm sorry, but
Well,
this is for you.
Keep the camera off.
have a
He wants the
question.
camera off.
I have a question for you about school. Whether Travis, in your school, in your class, do you have a class that explains how the local ecology works? Is that something you do, an environmental class or a geography class? Do you have anything that tells you how local things work?
Yeah, we have a class for that. It's called Plant. Next year we'll have Health instead of Plant.
Mhm.
But in Plant, we usually just learn about things that are going on in the environment, and like stuff that is going on in social media and everything like that. It's like protect you from the world, you know?
He said he already knew almost everything that you were discussing tonight.
Almost. We learned about it all.
great.
That's
Okay.
encouraging.
Yeah, that is encouraging.
Kate,
So
I
with
think
the-
you've got to volunteer for your program.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yes,
mentioned
and
that to him and he said, how much
neighbors.
does it pay? I said, no, it's volunteer. That's nothing.
Isn't there something called community
No, I
service
just saw the money
credits
and I
at
was
your
like,
school?
Travis.
What?
Don't you get community service credits at your school?
Hmm.
I don't know. I have no clue. I think that's something that my mom would know. I don't really follow that.
What school do you go to, Travis?
Pearson.
Pearson. Okay, great. Well, it's good to know that there is environmental education going on at Pearson. Because I was going to comment on your question about that pie chart and food and land use, that yes, food production, agriculture, and cattle, certainly cattle ranching, and all the industrial agricultural practices have been so destructive of our environment and contributed to our climate crisis and our carbon problems and many others in terms of nutrients and soils, et cetera. But also something that we're at Change Hampton are very involved in is what people are doing in their yards, and the whole phenomena of turf lawn culture, that the maintenance of that, first of all, it robs all the habitat, natural habitat, native habitat. So it's robbed the habitat of birds and bees and pollinators and insects and animals, all of which we need for a functioning ecosystem. But also it requires so much water use to maintain, and also chemical use. And those are the issues that, of course, we drum away at. We become evangelists on the issue of lawns. And the tie-in with compost is so close, because what we want, instead of all those commercial fertilizers, one of you mentioned it in your talk, is we need that natural fertilizer and those soils that composting creates, that black gold, as they call it. And so I think that the reason that some of our folks on Change Hampton aren't here tonight is because they've been long-term composters, and they think that they've got that solved in their individual lives. But what I like about what Mary and Katie are proposing is the community aspect of this, because we've got to reach all those people, those other folks that aren't doing that. And we know there's a lot because of our landfill crisis. And so we're really, so appreciative of that inspirational model. And I think we can't talk about it enough. And clearly, I think from what's going on and what you described, that tomorrow they're having a meeting, East Hampton Town, the Energy and Sustainability Committee, about how to do this pilot. And I know there've been forewarnings about it. And Kate Rogers on the East Hampton Town Board has been behind that. And so we look forward to really great things happening out of that in East Hampton as well, because it looks like we're catching up as usual behind all these other towns on the East End. We're never in the forefront.
I don't know, East Hampton
Well,
seems to be in the
the
forefront.
goods go from
Linda?
west to east, and Montauk is, East Hampton is the farthest of Long Island, the easternmost part of Long Island. So
Right.
wind
right,
blows
yeah.
from west to east.
It's
right,
not true,
right.
Gail. It's not true. I think Riverhead, for the first time in our history of since 1641, we're in the front of something. But you guys, that was mean. But you guys are actually, I had latched into the Energy and Sustainability Committee people early on, because you guys got so many models. Southampton, the 400 plus sustainability 400 plus document, it's like 400 plus pages, and that's just the addendum to the comprehensive plan. So I think the foundation's been laid very well. And now that we're getting the practical things going, we got a lot of bugs to get out of this thing.
Right.
And we have to keep reinforcing that it's going to be different even among neighborhoods, it's going to be different. So all of these puzzle pieces put together they're critical, and we have to use our brains and think without a box instead of outside of the box.
Right, right. Yeah, well,
Linda?
Mark, I know you really have been pushing and motivating where you're based in Riverhead and Southold. Were you involved in the Southold project? Yes, yes. And so, any other questions or
Yes,
comments?
Linda is
Well,
raising.
I wanted to say I'm a past chair of the Energy Sustainability Committee, but so I'm not as involved as I used to be, but I know that they are very focused on exactly what you are talking about here tonight. And if you want, I think the best person to talk to on the committee is Lena Tabori. Has anybody spoken to her? And the one other thing that always has made the biggest impression on me is that we have a sole source aquifer.
Yes.
Yes.
And if indeed that one sole source aquifer is challenged, we have significant problems here on Long Island, on the eastern part of Long Island, because of this sole source aquifer.
Yes.
So this is my first meeting. It's very interesting. I live alone, and I do not garden. I have a meadow, but I'm also a shoreline on Hook Pond, so I am extremely careful about what's going to happen to Hook Pond. And as you also know about Town Pond, what that looks like now. So water as very much a critical element in the programs that you're talking about.
Mhm.
The most critical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have
I
a-
think so too.
I have a question. What is the best thing to do with the animal waste food products, meats and the like,
Good
other
question.
than never have them in the first place? Which would be
Well,
the-
I can tell you what we do. And I want to speak up for farms. You know, it's industrial farming that is causing all the damage, not farming. And there's a lot of organic farmers, you know, and people who are moving towards organic farming. So it's not farming, per se, it's the industrialization of farming. My grandfather had a dairy farm in East Hampton from when he was a young man. I think it started in 1910, and then he retired in the 1970s. He never put any chemicals on his, his cows were loved, they had shaded trees, and, it was beautiful. And every cow had a name, and, there's other ways to farm besides industrial farming is what I'm getting at.
Sure.
But the question was about food. So what we do at home here with our compost and our countertop is, we have a fireplace or an outdoor, fireplace, and we burn our bones. Or bones are very good for roses. I think people buy bone meal to feed their roses. So when we plant roses or other things, we dig a deep hole and we put our bones in. And I see we've got a master gardener here, Nancy. Maybe she can speak to that. I mean, if they what you add, bone meal is good for your garden.
Yeah.
I don't know about putting bones, digging a hole. You'd have to dig it pretty deep so that the voles and other.
We go deep.
wonderful-
We go deep.
Yeah, but I love the idea. I do know that there's bokashi is a different type of composting with fermentation involved, and I know that sometimes is an option. But I love the idea of just burning it. I love that.
Yeah.
Go
Put
for
it
it.
in fireplace.
It's not good for the
My
It's on
husband
fire.
says, it's energy. Put it with
Yeah.
the logs.
Mm. Mm. All right. I bury stuff every now and then in the backyard, but yeah, maybe I'll dig deep holes and do that.
But if we had a large scale compost operation here, maybe at a farm, that compost heats up, compost can heat up to very high degrees, and
Yeah.
the bones burn.
Oh, so they mix all the compost in the big composting areas. It's not just vegetable composting.
Mark, can you speak to that?
Are you talking about ECI specifically?
No, just in general, if a farm had a large composting operation.
Yeah, they'll take bones. I know Glenda does over at Grounds for Appeal. Sorry, we've got hungry creatures here. I'm getting nagged here for dinner. Yeah, so the high temperatures, dairy not so much, but they do take dairy in the larger composting operations. Yeah, and there's the green cones, the volcano cones that they use for other things. You could drop the bones and all that kind of stuff in there to anaerobically digest. That's okay. That's about it. I think Nancy's. I think that's going to be your. Let's find out what we do with the bones question for next time.
I'm all for it. I do want to say that master gardeners right now, the master gardeners in training, and I'm a TA right now with them, and I'm a new master gardener, so I have so much to learn. And I will say that there are a number of people who are interested in composting on a larger scale, rethinking the lawn. So I'm going to spread, and I already have spread some of this wonderful information and initiatives, because gardeners need to work together and to create their end of term project. And so all of this information is going to be disseminated and will be, yeah. And yes,
Excellent.
we'll find out what to do with the bones.
Great.
I'm sorry, how about our disposals, like kitchen disposals? The where the waste goes down the drain and goes into your sewage system. How
Yeah, we've been-
detrimental is that?
I've been looking into those. Actually, was a great question on that. And what I'd like to see is that turn into something that we can capture it, because it is sludge. It's biosludge is what it is. If we can
Mhm.
find a way to use that, but it would have to have a separate drain out into the back into a place. And it's a great option. If it's going into the regular sewer system that goes to the wastewater treatment plant, then it becomes treated there. Again, we're not recovering a whole lot from that. There is some sludge comes out of that, some composting material that does come out of that, but I don't like it as a municipal solution. I like it on an individual solution, but again, it would have to be captured and treated and used. So it's not a lot. I'd rather have it go back into the soil. It's so much easier. There's no, there's no technology really involved unless you get to the large scale.
Mhm.
Right. Well, just to add to that, that's something that people do here in Mexico, the people that have means to do that, they separate gray water from black water. And it's fairly common in, as they say, in a certain sector of the community and society, but you do have to have two different water capture systems. One goes into your septic and the other goes into your gray water that you use on your yard, on your gardens, on your, yeah. And, but then of course you have to be very conscious about what you're pouring down the sink.
Yeah, I feel bad about all the hot water that goes down the drain.
Yes,
A lot
yes.
of hot water, a lot of energy goes down the drain.
Right,
Or filling the toilet with drinking water that's been purified.
right, right, exactly. Well, listen, if there are no more comments or questions, we should wrap this up because it is dinner hour or late for people with a long day. Thank you so much, Mary Morgan and Katie Plumb, and we'll be looking for you at the farmers markets to search around to see if we want to add to your compost bins there.
Great, great. Look forward.
Great.
look
We
forward to
enjoyed it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
yes, good, thank you, bye.
Bye now.